Good morning, guys. Today I'm in kind of a special place to me. It's one of those little streams that I would escape to every summer to get out of the heat, come up here and enjoy fishing for wild trout. But in 2021, this entire stream area burned. About 50 to 60% of the entire drainage burned. And I was pretty devastated when I came up here after the fire to see, the forest that I came to fundamentally altered. And I didn't fish it that first summer because the fires were burning through September. It's now 1 year later, and I've come back to this forest to see how it's doing and to check on the trout and see how the trout population is doing. Now, fire can have a really profound impact on the forest, but it also has a very profound impact on the streams in those forests. So today I thought I'd take an opportunity to discuss a little bit about what are the impacts of wildfire on trout. And I thought I'd do a little bit of fishing and see how these trout are doing. So let's get one of my Tenkara rods rigged up and we'll start tossing some flies in the water and hopefully get some fish. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit today about wildfire and trout. Wow, nothing, no bites at all. So in the immediate aftermath of a fire, one of the greatest threats to trout is, of course, ash and soot outflows. You can see here in the sand, there's all this burnt ash and soot from the fire, and this can wash downstream, especially during the spring when we get really intense hot fires like this fire was, and it can cause it clogs up their gills and they can't breathe and they die from it. I'm very concerned already because normally I already have several fish, at least bites, or I see fish darting among the rocks, and I haven't even seen a fish or got a bite yet. Let's keep going. Here, this area is all burned. A few of the pines survived, but a lot of them died as the fire jumped into the canopy. But closer to the stream, you got a cooling effect. Those plants had a higher moisture content, and so the riparian zone didn't burn as hot as the adjacent areas, so that helps a little bit. One of the greatest threats to the trout would be rapid warming of the stream post-fire, because you're not going to have that canopy shading it. But it looks like here, at least it didn't have that issue because of the way of this mosaic burn, where it burned intensely on the hillsides, not as intensely down here. So it probably didn't get that as extreme of a temperature spike as it might have if it had burned the entire canopy all along the stream. Now there are other areas along the stream that the canopy did burn, and that can still impact the stream temperature downstream from those points. So I'm not sure how much of the stream canopy is intact further upstream if you keep going. Oh, there we go, there's our first fish. Yeah, that's a good sign. First fish, finally. Okay, so there we go. A survivor. This is West Slope Cutthroat. It's very good to see one. What a beautiful little fish. The water's so cold right now because it's fall. Beautiful little hen. Part of the reason I waited to come up here till this fall is I was concerned about that stream canopy being intact and the water temperatures being hotter than normal. And we've been getting lots of 50s at night, so I felt like if there were fish in here, I wouldn't be stressing them as much. But it's really good to see a fish on this stream and catch one. Let's keep going. There we go, got another one. It's like another cutty. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful little fish. Still has the paw markings, but you can see that cutthroat really well. Not in that pool. The density of fish definitely seems depleted. I guess that's to be expected. Like I said, you can get a lot of mortality from the ash and soot in the spring, especially when we get the floods, the snow melt off of those burn areas, those burn scars. But another thing that can kill these fish is the fire retardants that they use to fight these fires. Now, I'm not sure if any retardants were used in this drainage. Since there's no man-made structure here, I can't imagine them using them, but it's possible, and it really depends on where you're at. But they do kill fish, and they have a high level of toxicity for aquatic life. So I'm not surprised to see lower density of fish in here, just because of the probability that with as much as this watershed burned this past year and the intensity of that fire in places, that there probably was a significant ash outflow here. Oh, there's one. Got one. Ooh, that's a nice one. Really pretty. He's putting up a good fight. Beautiful buck. There we go. Pretty buck. Look at that. Oh, he's so gorgeous. Still got a little bit of the fire on his belly. They're spring spawner, these cutthroat. So most of their color is going to be gone by now. Alright, let's get him going. So even with extreme fires, as long as you have areas upstream that didn't burn, or small refugia, the areas that didn't burn, that won't be as severely impacted, then those can provide source for recolonization of the creek. So, you know, I'm seeing some larger fish in here, so probably not an extreme mortality event for this stream, although there are substantially fewer fish than I normally would encounter. But fire is a natural part of this ecosystem. You can see up here on this hillside, there's lots of dead burned trees, but there's still cottonwoods and ponderosas that have survived, even with extreme burn marks up the side of the trees. They have very thick bark. They are fire adapted. Fire is a very natural part of this ecosystem. And even though it can have these acute negative impacts on trout, it can also have positive impacts, because these ecosystems up here in these streams, they're very nutrient limited, and there's not a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen available to grow algae. But one of the things I'm seeing in here that I've never seen in the past is these thick layers of algae growing all over the rock. And this is probably from phosphorus and nitrogen that's released by the fire. It flows into the stream and fuels this algae growth. And of course, the algae growth supports insect life, and that of course supports the fish, the trout. They can grow and get fat and healthy. So if we come over here and look, in fact, I see a lot more just spotty algae growth even in the flowing areas on these rocks. You can see all of this algae. And on the underside here, you can see we've got little stoneflies crawling around, and these are caddis shells, and they are feeding on this algae or feeding on each other. And the fire is what is helping to fuel this growth. So lots of caddis shells in here. You can even see there's a caddis right here, that little guy there. That's all trout food. Okay, well, let's keep going upstream and see if we can't find some more beautiful cutthroat. I can just see so much more algae than I normally see everywhere here. I can also tell because it's a lot slippier when walking than it normally is. Of course, another thing that can happen, not only are you getting more phosphorus and nitrogen getting pumped into the system that's released by the fire, but you're also getting, especially in areas where you can see up here on this hillside, all of the canopy is burned, several trees have burned, and it's allowing more sunlight to come down and hit the stream. And normally these streams would be more shaded, but with the reduced canopy coverage along the stream, you're getting more energy pumped into this system. It has more nutrients for the algae, so it's really going to help fuel that growth. So you can get even more prolific algae growth in response to that increased sunlight and increased nutrients. But like I said earlier, that's a bit of a double-edged sword because it can heat up the stream and cause the stream to reach stressful or lethal temperatures depending on how much of the canopy has burned. This looks like a really nice place for a trout right up there. Let's see if there is one. Oh, I just saw one come up. There he is. Got him. Beautiful. Whew. Ooh, he's a fighter. Might have to go back downstream and chase him a little bit. Alright, see if we can get him here. Big buck, I think, or, yeah. Ah, there we go. Gorgeous fish. Gorgeous. I'll just say that every time, that's just what I do. I love the beauty of these native trout. That's a fat fish. He's been eating well all summer. And of course, if you're a survivor, it's a time of plenty for these trout because there's lots of bugs, lots of food to eat, and they can get really fat. I mean, it's a big fish for this stream. All right, let's get him going. Oh, there's one. That was a big one. This looks like it's going to be a brookie. So these are introduced, not native here. Oh, come here, buddy. Give me a brookie. There you go. So this is a char that's native to the eastern United States, not native here. They are definitely in their fall colors though. Very pretty. Alright, see how much larger their mouth is than the native cut. They're a lot more piscivorous, eat a lot more little fish, including the native cutthroat. Very pretty though. Look at those blue spots and red spots. Bright orange belly right now. Very pretty. So you can see the sun really beaming in here. There's all the burnt pines up on the hillside. And there are two sources of energy for a stream or nutrient inputs. One is the sun, so we call those autochthonous inputs. Autochthonous inputs is sunlight being converted into food by algae. Like we see this green filamentous algae down here on this rock, like this green stuff right here. It's on my hand. That's converting the sun's energy and the nutrients in the stream into sugars and then The bug life eats the algae, grazes on it, and they convert that into protein and fats that the trout can eat. And of course the other input is things like these leaves here that we see stuck on these rocks, and we call these, and there's a bug right there, you see the little, that's a mayfly on that leaf right there. He's probably browsing on some of the fungus and algae that's growing on the leaf that has fallen into the stream. And we call these allochthonous inputs. And allochthonous inputs are really critical to trout because you get lots of bugs falling into the stream, and then you get all this organic matter falling into the stream that provides the food base for all of the bug life. Of course, after a fire, you're going to get reduced allochthonous inputs if you've had the canopy burn. Fortunately, here it didn't, but further upstream I can tell it did. But you're also going to get additional inputs such as large woody debris, which are going to create more habitat for the trout. It's going to create structure and things that they can hide on. And eventually that woody debris will get broken down by fungus, and the fungus gets consumed by the bugs, and it keeps pumping nutrients into the system. Another thing that this algae provides is, of course, it helps to mix in oxygen. So if we look down here on this algae here, I'm going to throw my camera underwater here so you guys can see. You can see the bubbles off of the algae. That's oxygen being released into the water on the stream. And of course, trout have very high oxygen demands. They're already getting a lot of oxygen mixed in by the kinetic action of the stream, but it doesn't hurt having that additional oxygen input into the stream, especially during the warmer months when the water temps are higher and oxygen holding potential of the water is lower. You know, anything that's adding oxygen to the system is a good thing. Oh, come on, there's gotta be one in there. There we go, got one. Figured there'd be one in that pool somewhere. Looks like another brookie. Yes, it is a brookie. Little brookie. These are my favorite trout to eat. They taste so good. It's a very nice looking pool. A little more wind down in here than usual just because all this canopy's been eliminated up here. All the trees are burned. There he is. Got him. Figured there had to be one there somewhere. Another brookie. Getting into a lot of brookies up here. Little guy. There's one. Another brookie. Well, there's a lot more brookies than I remember up here. I wonder if they fared a little better in the fire than the cutthroats did. Normally I'd only catch one or two, but the entire length of the stream I've already caught like 4 today. Get my hands wet. Pretty little fish though. Well, normally this pool is just full of cutthroat, but I just hardly see any fish swimming around down there. I see 1 or 2 small ones. Definitely feels like the density is lower than it has been in years past. Seen mostly larger fish, not a lot of really small fish like I used to see. So the smaller fish might have struggled a little bit more with the ash. There he is. Got him. Definitely larger fish.
What a pretty buck. Man, look how big these fish are for, I mean, this is sort of like the upper end I would normally see on this river. But they're just the dominant fish now. Oop. I always like to fish on small streams coming from downstream up, because the fish are all going to be pointed upstream looking for bugs drifting down. So they're not looking behind them, so you can sneak up on them in this low, clear water. And you don't have to worry about them spooking. It's easier to spook them if you're working from the top down. It can be more stealthy. It's more forgiving this way. See if we can't shoot it underneath that rock over there. Feeling that somebody might be in there. Close. There he is. Really nice fish. Another big hen. Boy, a lot of big fish in here for this stream. There we go. Beautiful. Pretty girl. So looking around me, you see total loss of the riparian community here, as well as the surrounding forest, just completely burned from canopy to ground. And well, what I've learned here today is that even though a significant portion of this drainage was impacted in this similar fashion, I still found trout survived and persisted through this. And it reminds me that these forests and the streams that flow through them and the trout that live in those streams have evolved with wildfire for tens of thousands of years, and they're adapted to it. They are very resilient. They bounce back, they survive, and they persist. And that even though in the short term you might see a decline in your local trout fisheries after a wildfire, odds are in the long run they do get some benefit from these wildfires. You get that release of nutrients. I saw larger fish today. I saw a lot more algae growth than I typically see. So I saw a more productive stream, a stream that was in that transition to recovery. Obviously they did lose some fish. There wasn't much of a smaller generation of fish, but with those larger fish in there and all those food resources, I'm confident they'll bounce back. The succession along the stream has already begun, with willows and cottonwoods regenerating, and those pines that did survive regenerating and producing the next offspring to eventually recover this forest. Of course, the big question is what does the future hold? We've seen bigger and larger and more intense fires after 70 plus years of fire suppression. We have a warming climate. We've got this mega drought that we're in the middle of, and we just seem to get these larger, more intense fires that cover the entire watershed. And what does that mean for the future of trout? Only time will tell. But hopefully, with proper forest management, more patchwork burns, and more mosaic burn, we can hopefully get a system back into an equilibrium that will allow trout to persist and thrive in our stream forest once again. All right, guys, I hope this video was both fun and educational, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button below, and I'll see you next time out on the water. Just remember, fish smarter, not harder. Bye, guys.